We're live on YouTube. This is so exciting. Hey, Denise, how are you?
I'm good, Carrie. How are you?
Great. It is good to be back on What's the Takeaway.
It's great to be back. I
This is one
agree.
of my favorite few minutes of the week, getting to spend some time with you. And we have a really cool topic today. We're talking about the riding the waves of emotions, right? Everybody's going through so much emotion right now, especially our teenage sort of high school, college, post-college friends, right? Like they're really riding a whole new wave. So we thought we would talk about um, removing things from their lives to make their lives better. So what kind of takeaways do we want to focus on today?
I really believe that today we want to talk about things that are going to um, make this aged person really feel less isolated, right? So I think that's the first one. The first takeaway is take away working in isolation. We don't have to do it all ourselves, and they should know that. The second one is really take away thinking you shouldn't be sad or fearful, because that actually adds more pressure. And we'll get into that. And then the third one is taking away focusing on the negative or what's missing. And I think that one probably speaks for itself, but we're going to go into it anyway.
Yeah, because we all do it, right? It's not unique to this age group, and it's certainly um, it's something that I think you have to be focused on to even realize you're doing it.
But remember, we always know, or we do know, that our neural networks work that way anyway.
Yeah.
They set us up for what's wrong, right? That's a protective thing, but we have to switch that around a little and use that to our benefit, knowing that that's how, like overriding, because we know that's how our mind works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read this really cool thing this week, and it said like 4 million years ago, when the original cavemen were around, right? That the only ones that stayed alive were the ones that lived in fear because they understood where the danger was. So that's how they stayed alive, right? So our genetics are programmed by thousands of years of fear, right? And protection, because the people who weren't afraid or the people who didn't pay attention, they're long gone. They didn't reproduce. So that's sort of it's good, right? It's good that we're alert and we can make good choices about what is good for us and what's bad for us. But what we're learning is that the fears that we have may be programmed by the outside world and they're not real, right? Like the news is there to sell the news, right? It's not there to make you feel comfortable or content. It's there to keep you watching, right? And that's what this is, that whole fear trigger thing is all about. So my big thing is always just turn off that news, like just shut it down, especially news that you can't control, right? Turn off
No,
commercials that are fear based,
absolutely. The worse the
right?
news is, the more people are drawn into it. That's what they're banking on, right? It's
Yeah,
like watching a train wreck,
right.
but you can't take your eyes away, even though you're going to have those images in your head for a very long time. And
Exactly.
that's not really what you want. But it even goes, I think, deeper than that. Like, think about, how we grew up and what we heard or what our kids are hearing, right? Think about life's hard or life's a struggle, right? Money doesn't grow on trees, or oh, rich people are miserable or terrible, or like you hear these things, and even though they're in our subconscious, they're getting in our way.
They are.
So we kind of have to override that subconscious.
Yeah, and I think you have to ask yourself, are my actions getting me into a place of joy, or are my actions there are keeping me in a place of fear, right? And then almost like a fear thermometer. Like, of course, if you see a red light, you should press on the brakes, right? Because the red light's there for a reason. But if you hear about a car accident on the news, it doesn't mean you stop driving.
Correct.
Right. So it's almost like there's a fear thermometer, right? And we have to let our emotions, right, that wave of emotions, not dictate our actions, our will, our brains, right? Our ability to think through something has to take over.
Yes, but it's a practice,
Right.
right? It's not going to come to people right away, because it's been ingrained. for our whole life. So and in some cases, right? And that fear factor has been for generations and generations, right? That built-in neural network saying, cover yourself. You can. So here's what I really have been feeling lately. I think that if you feel you're in isolation, or if you feel that you're not really connecting with the world, you've got to get together with people, even if your first instinct is to pull away, right? Because in that connection, you're in action. And in action, you can't be in action and in fear at the same time. It doesn't work like that. And so knowing that pushing yourself just a little bit outside, just a little bit, not a lot, will bring you out even more. And maybe incrementally, you can really shift it around to a more positive outlook. I love what you are talking about when you're talking about focusing. If you're focusing on the negative, what are you missing in life? Like, what should we be focusing on? What is a better thing to do instead of focusing on the negative?
Right. So I think it's critically important that we get our young people connected again, right? Because one of the things that I've noticed, I have a young daughter, you have a young daughter, mine's a little bit younger. So she's still in a forced group setting, I'll say that. Mm-hmm. So, she went into the pandemic during high school, and she's coming out of the pandemic in college, right? And so she has that community around her. And what I see is happening is they're walking with each other out of this phase of their life, right? Mm-hmm. And they feel like they've actually conquered it, which they have, right? Because they're all still engaged, they're all still friends, they're all still in school. But that's kind of artificially put on them because they're still in a structured environment. The kids the young adults that concern me the most are the ones that are like, oh, this is great. The pandemic changed everything. We don't have to work together anymore. We can all work from home. We can live everywhere we want. Like, a friend of mine called me yesterday and said her daughter is moving halfway across the country. And I said, oh, did she get a new job? And she said, no, she just can because she basically works from home, right? And that could be a fabulous new thing. It's not necessarily a negative if there's a connection to a community, right? So I think as parents, one of the things we can do is help transition our kids into a new community.
I totally agree. I think it's super important. I think where your daughter is a little better seated or placed, right, definitely, with that built-in community, the community that I think thought that they would finish their college career, thought that they would walk across the stage, thought that they would go into that first job, right? Are a little more ill-prepared for the changes, and maybe a little more fear. I'm going to say fearful. I mean, downright fearful. Like, they're not sure, because what we've told them that they were going to experience, right? We've told them this their whole lives. They thought there was a natural order. They haven't experienced. And I'm not saying that they can't adjust and they're not resilient, but what I am saying is that we are putting a lot on them. They're hearing things like, your generation's going to have it very tough. You're not going to live up to the standards of your parents, your grandparents. And I feel like in no other time in history, through no other disaster, whether it was a war, whether it was anything, we'll say wars, we'll say the Depression, we'll say even after 9/11.
Even right? Other pandemics, yeah, like like the Spanish flu and those kinds of situations, right?
Correct. We've never said to them, sorry, it's going to be really bad. What we've done is we've actually encouraged our youth, and we've supported our youth, and we've almost said, you're our great hope,
right,
for the future. We're so excited for you. And I think in this mixed messaging of stay inside, stay away, and wow, there's nothing you're going to be able to do. This isolation and this chronic stress is felt in all of our lives, I think, right now in varying degrees. But for them, they haven't really formed fully who they are, what they want to do, where they want to go with it. And now they're feeling very stuck. And which is really interesting, right? Because we can see, we can meet people, we can get any information we want, we can purchase anything we want right from our screens, right? So everyone's attached to a screen. And instead of being out there in the real world with real communities, which is a blessing for your daughter in college, because she has that real touch in real time. And so I'd like to say that these young people are really missing, I think, a couple of critical things in that emotion, right? We were saying it's in motion, right? Our emotions are up and down. And in the balancing of it, it's not a balancing act. It's always those course corrections, those slight course corrections. So that if we're going this way and something comes up, you go, oh, I see that. Let's pivot. Let's go a little bit this way. Let's go. And then you're always staying in balance. It's so important that they learn how to do that. And I don't think it has to do with resilience, although I'm big on resilience. If something traumatic has happened in your life, there's still trauma.
Yes.
And you still have to work through the trauma, right? So it's not like be resilient, get over it. No, it's not that. I think that's actually more detrimental to them. I think if we teach them how to course correct, right? Maybe we're on the water again, right? And so we're navigating those waves of motion. Yeah, course correct it a little and keep reaching out. That's it. I mean, we really have to think about not working in isolation. It's very, very important.
You know what just came to me?
Yeah.
Who's in your boat? Who's in your boat? Right? So we don't want the world in our boat, right? You don't put like the news in your boat, and you don't put all the negative talk in your boat. But you do have to put a crew, right? We can't do this in isolation, right? So we're on these waters, we're in this emotional state. Who's in your boat? Like, choose carefully. And I think you have to kind of sit down with your young person and say, who's in your boat? And they may say, no one's in my boat right now. And then you can sit down with them and say, okay, let's put together a crew. And I think the cool thing is that, I don't know, like from my kids, I love my kids, they love me. But like, do they really want their mom always being the ones like, you're so awesome, you did such a great job, right? They need like the outside world to say that. Like, I know I've said to you sometimes, like, the phone call you make to my daughter sometimes has more meaning than the phone call I make to my daughter, right?
It's important.
That's because I've invited you into her boat, if you think of it that way, right? And then when they get sad, the other person can say to them, you know what, you're sad and it's okay to be sad. And if you need a shoulder to cry on, you can cry on the shoulder, but I'm here to tell you that I believe in you and you can overcome that. Right.
Yeah. And it's okay to sit in that sadness for a little bit. If you don't, you're not fully acknowledging what just happened.
You're also not being human. Like, we're not robots, right?
You're
like, oh, don't feel anything. Just, just soldier on. Like, keep a stiff upper lip.
Okay, that's really from 2 generations ago, by the way.
Okay, well,
So they're not listening to that at all. But I do agree. I like the analogy of who's in your boat and who's, rowing with you, because the power of community is so uplifting. I mean, you and I know that. We have an amazing community. But I think what we do is we really actually get strength from each other, probably by sharing stories, right?
Yeah.
Of what we've been through, and by listening to other people's stories. I think that there's a real benefit to being able to share that information. That all comes from community. It's super important. And so I think you're right. They have to be able not only to have the right people, but the right tools.
Yeah. So honestly, like, if you remove the isolation by putting people in their boat, you can manage the sadness in a way that's productive, that actually starts to turn the course, right? Course correct. And you start to build up dopamine and happiness and things. And I love the stories, and I want to end us with a story if I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I want everybody to imagine that it's a beautiful sunny day, whether it's sunny where you are or not. And I want you to walk outside and understand that you are totally in control of what you're looking at. And so the sun is so bright and shining and warm, right? And I think if we took our face and we looked up at the sun, it would take a nanosecond before our corneas would be burned, into oblivion. So we don't do that. What do? We look at the things the sun shines on. We look at the beautiful still water. We look at the flowers. We look at the grass. We look at the trees. We look at our friends' faces. Maybe we look at a puppy that's running through the grass, whatever you're seeing. Maybe it's like a shiny red sports car. Maybe maybe it's the outside of a building, of a place where you want to work, whatever pops into your mind, right? But you can choose to focus on the things the sun is shining on and see what's there, instead of walking outside and allowing yourself to really get hurt, right, by the outside world. You can go outside and get really, really hurt when you focus on the things that, are either not there, that you wish were there. You miss everything else, right?
Agreed.
You miss everything else. So the people in your boat can keep you looking at keep you looking away at the sun, from the sun, and just looking at the things the sun shines on.
And that's, we talked also a little bit about the gratitude.
Oh yeah.
Just if you're in
That's-
gratitude,
That's the best way to even figure out what's there, right? Just start making lists of things that you're grateful for. And then all of a sudden, your world is full of stuff, like full of really, really good stuff.
agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Carrie. This has been fun today. I like this topic. I think, well, I don't like the topic, but I think it's necessary to talk about. And I think many, many people are experiencing it right now. So
Yeah. And maybe we can keep talking about it, because I think there's more to be shared.
I do too. And then next time we'll talk about tools to bring with you in your
Yeah.
boat.
You don't have to do this alone, right? Like you can share oils and have those dopamine responses chemically altered in your body too. It makes it a little bit easier than trying to rely on your mind over matter kind of.
Yeah, tools are always valuable. And we
we're
know
good.
that
Tools are good.
aroma really does work.
It does for sure.
All right.
All right.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.